So thank you for the opportunity to share a bit about myself today. I am a KenzieSweet. I'm a very recent graduate of Susquehanna University, located in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. I graduated from Susquehanna summa cum laude with a Bachelor's of Science in Early Childhood Education. I currently hold a certification in Pennsylvania to teach pre-K through 4th grade, and I am currently seeking to add on 5th and 6th grade certification as well. Also at Susquehanna, I graduated with a minor in psychology. I necessarily didn't choose teaching. I feel more like I stumbled into teaching. That's how I explain it to anybody who asks, why did you decide to be a teacher? For a very long time, I thought I would go into Susquehanna to become a child psychologist. Psychology was my thing. That's what I wanted to study. I wanted to help. And I thought, yeah, I can do that. I love kids. I love helping. I'm going to be a child psychologist. And then the more I researched it, the more I realized every day people impact kids like no other. And what impacts kids more than going to school? Because they're going to school 5 days out of the week. And then I got thinking, if I really want to help kids, I don't want to be the person they're coming to when they finally got to the point where they have nobody else to turn to. I want to be the person in the day-to-day grind, helping them and supporting them and being an advocate for them. And when I realized that that was more suited for me, that I wanted to be that day-to-day person influencing their growing minds, that's when I realized that maybe teaching was more my style. And then the more I researched teaching and the more I researched how teachers can influence students, I thought, that's what it is. That's my thing. That's what I need to do. And I pursued teaching, and I haven't looked back since. So because of my psychology minor, and also because of my major in early childhood education, I'm able to look at teaching through a very unique perspective. I say I looked at teaching through two different lenses. I have the teaching lens, which is strictly academic, and I can think, all right, what's the standard? What do I need the students to know? What do I need them to be able to do? What are the activities I'll implement to help them? How am I going to differentiate for my gifted learners, for my struggling learners? I know all of that. I can look at all of that, and I can plan for all of that, and that's really, really important. However, because of that psychology minor and because of my desire to help students beyond academics, I look through teaching through a very humanistic lens. How are these students feeling in my classroom? How do they feel when they come in the morning and they sit down? Are they excited to be there with me? Would they rather be somewhere else? What's going on at home? I look at the feelings and the emotional side of education because so much more impacts their learning than just the activities and the information that I am providing for them. So when I am asked, what is your teaching philosophy? I always say it's very simple. It is my privilege to support the emotional, the social, and the academic well-being of my students. And to be completely honest, I believe that the emotional and the social well-being comes first. And once that's in place and those students know Miss Sweet supports me, Miss Sweet cares, she's in my corner, she's my personal cheerleader, then the academics fall into place because they know that they can trust me. I strive to build those relationships with students because those relationships are what keep them going when the going gets tough. I wholeheartedly believe that, and that's what I strive to do in student teaching, and that's what I will strive to do in my own classroom. I had an amazing student teaching experience. I was fortunate to student teach in Selinsgrove Area Intermediate School. I was in a 3rd grade classroom. It was a very unique classroom because it was a co-teaching relationship. So my cooperating teacher was primarily the math, science, and social studies teacher, and then her co-teacher handled all of the English language arts. So throughout my 10 weeks of student teaching, I collaborated with the English language arts teacher, but I primarily taught the math and the science and the social studies, which I love. I am huge on the math, science, social studies, and I had the amazing opportunity to also teach multiple STEM lessons, and that is something that I am striving to grow in professionally as well because STEM has become such a huge component in students' lives. This student teaching experience was beyond what I ever could have imagined. I had a great group of 42 students, and amongst these 42 students, they were all very diverse. I had students with gifted individualized education programs. So right off the bat, I was tasked with how do I take the curriculum I'm supposed to teach and bump it up a notch for these students who are so unbelievably gifted. But also, as with any classroom, I had those students who were the middle of the road. They got their work done. Every now and again, things were a little tough, but for the most part, they got it. So then I really had to think, all right, how am I going to keep these kids engaged, give them the support that they need? And then I had a group of students who struggled, and they hated school. I'm pretty sure the classroom was the last place on earth that they would want to be. So as a very, very fresh teacher, as somebody who wanted nothing more than to support her students, I had to think to myself, how am I going to teach these gifted kids? How am I going to make sure my middle-of-the-road kids stay engaged? And then how in the world am I going to make my struggling students love being in this classroom? But I did it because I had the ability to work with these students in small groups. I love small group teaching. I can get in front of a classroom and I can teach whole group, but I learned through student teaching just within 10 weeks that if I really want to make those connections and build those relationships and meet the academic needs at the exact same time, small group is the way to go. I lesson planned in a hybrid format. So my students were rotating in math and science. They were rotating through stations. There was a technology station, there was a collaborative station where they worked together with partners, and then there was the direct instruction station, and that was where they got to work with me. And because of that, when my gifted kids got to me, I was able to say, all right, you guys mastered this already, you know this skill. Let's work on this skill that maybe you wouldn't necessarily see until 4th grade, but I think you're ready. And that was so exciting for them to be like, oh, Miss Sweet thinks we're ready for this. She's given us this new cool thing to work on. And then when my average learners got to me, I was able to just meet whatever needs they had at the time. And then when my struggling learners got to me, I was able to not only meet the needs that they needed in the moment, but also build all that background knowledge that unfortunately they were missing and what was making it such a struggle for them. But those small groups were a happy time. They were no longer the kids who were sitting with everybody else who was raising their hand because they already knew the answer, and they were sitting there lost. Because everyone in their small group were like them. They were all on the same level. So they weren't the odd ones out anymore. They felt normal within that group. They didn't feel bad within that group. So those groups were happy. I put on my best cheerleader smile, and I made that a happy time for those kids to learn. So not only were they learning, but their emotional well-being was being supported, and their social well-being was supported because they were working with peers. I was giving them as much encouragement as they possibly could need, and they were getting all of the academic support. So I love small group learning. I love hybrid lesson planning. And I always say that I lesson plan in a backwards way. I always start with the end in mind. I look at the curriculum and the standards that I'm supposed to meet. And I ask myself, at the end of this unit or lesson, what do I need these students to be able to do? And what do I need these students to know? And once I research those standards and I have that figured out, I write down those objectives. Then I go through and say, okay, what really cool, engaging activities can I implement within my classroom that will support this learning, that will get the students to these goals? So I always start with the end in mind, and then I go back and figure out all those little details that make a lesson very engaging for students. And also why I lesson plan, I think, in my small groups. How am I going to meet all of their academic needs? How am I going to meet their emotional and their social needs as well? After I finished my 10 weeks within Selinsgrove Area Intermediate School within that awesome 3rd grade classroom, I spent 5 weeks in a pre-K counts classroom at Middleburg Elementary School, located in Middleburg, Pennsylvania. That was also a unique situation for me to be in because I went from working with this energetic, super outgoing, really starting to be inquisitive 8-year-olds to 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. many of which had circumstances outside the classroom that impacted their learning, unfortunately, in negative ways. But I'm very fortunate for that experience because that taught me just how much I can go beyond the curriculum to meet the needs of my students. And it also taught me just how valuable the family component is within education. I communicated with my preschoolers' parents on a daily basis. I completed home visits with my cooperating teacher. There was never a time that I wasn't communicating with parents, and I really learned through that when the parents are involved and when I'm involved and the student was in the classroom, that is where the most learning is going to happen. So my preschool placement was an awesome way for me to learn just how involved parents should be. Because I now 100% believe that the time to start communicating with parents is as soon as possible and keep it going throughout the school year. I did this with my third graders as well. I would write notes home to parents for very positive reasons. For instance, I had a little boy who was struggling with behavior, and he finally got into this groove where he was making really great choices, and I was praising those choices, and I thought, you know what, your mom and dad need to know about these really great choices you're making too. So it's as simple as just one night after school writing up a little note that said, "Dear so-and-so's mom and dad, I wanted you to know that he's doing great in school, he's making great choices, he's being respectful to me, he's being respectful to his peers." And that kid was so happy the next day when I gave him that note because it felt really, really good to have mom and dad hear something positive about him. One thing that I was able to do throughout student teaching was complete a self-study research. Basically what I did is I asked myself, what is one way I want to become a better teacher? And I thought, I want to be better at giving my students corrective feedback. How am I able to tell them, this isn't going quite right, this is wrong, but here's how we're going to fix it. And on the flip side, I wanted to be better at specifically praising my students, telling them, hey, you've got it, you're on the right track. Here's exactly what you did right. So I told myself, if I walk into the self-study research experience and if at the end of it I'm able to provide corrective feedback and provide specific praise a lot better than I am right now, then I'm going to consider it a success. And that self-study taught me way more than I possibly could imagine. Yes, it taught me those techniques, those ways for providing the corrective feedback, the ways for giving the specific praise, but it also taught me that students just want you to believe in them. They just want you to say, yeah, this isn't quite right, but I believe it's going to get better for you. And they also want you to know that you believe that they can continue doing good work and they can continue to make you happy. It was an amazing experience, and I'm able to take all of that knowledge that I learned through my own self-study research into my future classroom. I believe that I am an asset to your school district because I have a ton of grit. I don't give up. If you were to talk to any of my cooperating teachers, any teachers that I ever did any tutoring for, any of my past employers, that is exactly what they're going to tell you. I don't give up because I believe that students are capable of anything if there is somebody in their life willing to give them the time and the energy to help them accomplish their own goals. I am privileged as an educator to work with these students. They have to come to school. They have to be in that classroom. But I am privileged to be in the position to be that influencer, to be the one up there leading the lessons. And I think about that and I channel all of that passion that I have for these kids. And I don't give up. If things are tough, if a student isn't understanding something, I don't give up. I will be as creative as I possibly need to until they get it. And when a student is having a rough time and they're just not connecting with me, I don't give up. I don't just say, this relationship is impossible to create. I find another way to do it. All of that grit and passion that I have for teaching comes together, and I truly think that it makes a classroom environment for my students where that's contagious. they see the passion that I have and my ability to not give up, and then they have more passion for learning and they don't want to give up on themselves. I model for my students how I want them to feel. So if I feel passion and grit, then that's exactly what I'm going to model for them, and that's exactly what I would model for the students in your school district as well. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share a little bit about myself. I would appreciate the opportunity to share even more about my past teaching experiences and my hopes for my own future teaching. So thank you.